Welcome to episode 7 of Into the Foxhole. We have our buddy here, Akash.
Aw.
You stayed.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Hey, Akash, hey.
That's a good thing.
I'm gonna net 2 episodes in quick succession, and then you'll never see me again.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. And you got your boy Cag here.
Yay.
You
That's
have your
Craig
boy, you
for
have
short.
you have your boy Edmund.
It's not.
Running things, and we'd want to cause lots of unfortunate delays in games. But what we'd like to talk about would be announcements for a game that we feel might be too soon prior to release. Like, let's say 3 years, 4 years, some of them being like 5.
Yeah, let's just give it like a quick example real fast. Clarify a little bit.
What's too soon?
Yeah, so I mean, you're at your E3 press conference. It's E3 2000X. And
X.
well, I mean, who knows?
20,000. 20,000.
Exactly. But yeah, you're at your E3s, right? You're at your conference. Your favorite developer comes up on stage and he's like, do I have a show for you guys? And then bam, favorite franchise, finally getting that sequel you've been waiting like 5 years for. And shit's happening, shit's exploding, gameplay looks awesome, everything looks real cool. And then it says like fall 30XX.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, what the hell? At that point, to me personally, that's when my mind just completely shuts down and I lose all interest in that title.
I
Yeah,
mean,
pretty much.
I mean, if it's a long release, I still have a real world example. Like, is that something that even happens with a game just announced? Like, to give a release date, even like, let's
Well, I
say
mean, they would never say like, "Hey, this game's coming out in 5 years." Of course, I'm exaggerating, but
you have to immediately draw the distinction of what is good for your mental health and what is good for the developer's wallet.
This is true
Because, like, I remember when they had announced that Halo Reach was coming out, back when I had actual faith in that series.
I like how we all have our.
I know.
We all have our franchises.
It's kind of hard not to. It's like the elephants in the living room.
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna go into that. But point is, I was excited, needless to say, for the game to come out. But it was like, I think they announced it like a year and a half or like a year in advance. It was at least a year. And like, to me, from a marketing standpoint, that's a good amount of time. That's fair. But for me, I was like, fuck, this needs to come out now.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's just human nature. You want it. You see it and you want it.
6 months is like a pretty good release point for me to be like, I can wait. But a year is like shit. Because it's already like around like mid-year usually. When is like E3 always?
Yeah, it's gonna be like June.
Yeah,
so
it's
like
June.
Yeah, and then so like normally it's like the best thing you could ever hope for by June is this holiday season.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, especially from like Microsoft, it's actually rare because most of the times they announce their stuff maybe 6 months prior to. Mm-hmm. The only time you ever see them do the year and a half thing is what the major releases like Halo. Like that they're going to do the year and a half thing. Most times,
we have to say we're coming out with a Halo, so people actually buy our console.
Because
most times a Forza's announced 6 months before it's released.
Right? It depends on the type of game. If it's like one of the really like big heavy hitting franchises that sell a lot of units, like Halo or Call of Duty or whatever, it's always going to be like a large amount of time. You're always going to be waiting at least a year.
Yeah,
but even then, they'll have an extensive marketing campaign. They'll have probably like some dumbass fucking virtual game. What are they called? Fuck. The weird cryptic bullshit, like leave like a fucking
like
a turd in a mailbox and you have to decode what it is.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But it's like they do those often, but that's really only from select companies that do a lot of that. With bigger titles like Assassin's Creed and like Call of Duty, a lot of them stay in that 6 month range. Simply because they're annual franchises, and they have the money that they could afford to market heavily in 6 months. Microsoft is one of these companies that if they're doing a Halo, they could afford to market even longer. So if they know, that, especially with Gears of War 4, Gears of War 4 was announced this E3, but it's clearly being shown to release at the ending of next year. So that's another year and a half. Halo, that's the same thing. It's another year and a half because we saw Halo 5 stuff last E3. So I could understand them doing the year and a half thing for their prized ones, but the big dogs always try to do that 6-month thing because they could afford to do that 6-month thing with their titles. I don't know if this is so much. I don't know if this is so much because it's a game you might really, really want that you might feel that way, or if it's. I mean, because it's established. You've played Halo. So you understand that, you know what the IP is. The IP could market well.
It's not true.
In that amount of time because it's a known IP.
Oh, okay, yeah, for marketing. Yeah.
Yes, and the reason why I bring that up is because we have other titles that are new IPs that get announced and released, let's say, 2 years after announcement, 3 years after announcement, and so forth. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, they could do that with Assassin's Creed and say, here, in 6 months you're getting it. In a year, you're getting it. You can't really do that with a brand new one that comes out where no one knows what it is, and you're gonna
new IPs. It doesn't fly the same way because not only generally like new IPs are from companies that you've never heard of yet, so we don't know what their release schedules are like. You don't have any history on them.
I mean, no, not generally speaking. Oh, we know what some of these companies are like.
It depends.
So it's rare you get a big AAA new IP and you never heard of the company. If you heard of,
I'm talking about smaller games. Yeah, like say you would say Dead Island is a bigger budget game because of the way that it is. It's not like an indie game,
right.
But at the same time, nobody really knew a lot about Deep Silver.
Because
they made games that you would say that are popular if you play a lot of those types of games.
Questionable.
They're like in the seedy underground company of games that somebody's grandma got them for Christmas.
They're getting better. They made some good acquisitions and they're getting better.
Okay, they're in that realm of games that are popular with the same people, cult following.
I could understand.
Look how long Dynasty Warriors has been around. It's not like a AAA franchise, but the same people are buying these games.
Yeah,
disgusting.
No, but I don't know. That game shit's awesome, man.
with the amount of time
I haven't bought one since 4 on the PS2, but I still like them.
The only one I actually really played and really enjoyed was the Gundam one.
Fuck the
PS3
one.
I thoroughly.
I played it for 5 minutes. I don't want to touch that shit.
I love that.
My dog Lou Boo wasn't in that shit.
That's what you get, gosh. But in terms of smaller titles like Dead Island, I mean, and mind you, that's another good example to bring up. Earlier, we were talking about graphical degrading of a content in between time.
Yeah, because look at the way it launched. They launched with the most breathtaking trailer that most people anyone ever seen.
Oh my god, that trailer goes down in history.
It was
man.
beautiful,
it was so beautiful,
and it was incredibly misleading.
It was
absolutely.
You see the game, and there's fucking 5 frames of animation.
It's it looks incredible, and I agree with you. The problem with showing off a game like that from a company that's relatively small of a big IP is that you're not properly conveying what the people are going to get,
and that's where my problem lies. I know, we were talking about it from a company standpoint. We're talking about from the company standpoint. When is it okay to release? But to me, I don't want to hear this shit. If it's coming out 2 years from now, I don't want to hear about it. I don't care.
No, see, that's the difference.
That's what I'm saying. When I said, my body just completely shuts down to the point where I will forget that this game. I'll look at it. I'm watching the trailer. Okay, I can dig it. All of a sudden, boom, 2 year mark. Poof, gone, and then that game comes out 2 years later. I completely forgot about it.
Yeah, here's the thing though, and these are always works in progress too. So when you announce a game 2 years ahead of time and no one's ever heard of you, chances are this game might not even look the way it was when you showed it off in the first place. Hell, that even happens to bigger companies.
Exactly,
that's a problem.
That's
a big issue.
We might as well.
That's false advertising. I can give you the most beautiful looking thing in the world.
We might as well cite the best case example right now. The best case example is what that man Todd Howard did for Fallout 4 when they released it at the E3 conference.
Oh, man.
When they announced it, I mean. And when he just came up there, he fucking talked about the game. He's like, this is what it's going to look like. And he made a damn good job assuring me that when I buy this game, this is what the fuck it's going to look like.
Yes.
This is what I'm going to get. And he's like, it's coming out this year. What do you want from me?
We all do that. No, but with that great example, I'd like to lead into this. though we understand that they could do something like that being a bigger team and having this game worked on longer, initially that wasn't the case for them. So if you look at how they're releasing Fallout 4, they're only releasing Fallout 4 this way because they're a big enough company that they can financially do that.
They have a presence without marketing.
Because it's more established.
People know, okay, New Vegas came out, Skyrim has come out, and we haven't seen any, either of those from them in a while. And so they know, probably Fallout 4 is coming soon.
They're working on it.
Yeah, exactly. So we it's like the elephant in the room. We all knew Fallout 4 was coming out the ending of this year.
No, we did not know.
I knew, and you legitimately could quote me on several people that I said before they ever said anything. Fallout was going to be fall this year, simply because
we had a good idea.
If you look at the timing,
it goes back to what he said. I did not want that feeling in my heart.
Absolutely,
there's that 5% chance.
Exactly,
that some weird shit happened at the company, and there's 1 year later.
Exactly, I get you on that. But because of the timing of it, and because they've already spent several years not speaking about it, it was highly likely it was going to be fall that year. Look at how they did it with Fallout 3. Fallout 3 didn't release the same way you see 4 being released now. It was a good year and a half prior to its release, and it was being announced.
I still remember the E3 conference where they had I think it might have even been Adam Sessler who was there. They were showing off VATs and stuff.
Who's that?
Awesome.
Was it? No. What's that? Was it Adam Sessler? I feel like it was.
I don't know.
But I like how they did it with 3, but 3 is not the same situation you have with 4. I would have been more upset with something with Fallout 4 being the year and a half, but because it's already sold well enough, people know what it is. They could afford to say, we have a 6-month window before we release a game that's clearly already made. So if this game is already made and Todd Howard's already tweeted and told people that the game's already done and all they're doing is fixing things up, this is the same way we see lots of games. Consider Assassin's Creed, the one that was releasing this fall, has been being made for probably 2 to 3 years. So when they're showing it off to you, they're showing it off the same way Greg wants those games to be represented in a finalization mode.
That's because those annual franchises usually cycle development teams.
And I don't just mean that, but I mean with the understanding that it's being worked on. So if we know Fallout's being worked on, we know that fall release date is extremely likely if you consider when their last several games released.
Right.
It's likely, but I feel like when you get a release date, the farther it is, the higher probability is that you're going to see some fucked up shit.
Well, yeah. Because, we're talking about, Todd Howard or whatever. He's Fallout 4.
I see, Fallout 4. When they tell me the game is coming out in less than 6 months, you're delivering to me a message saying that this game is mostly completed already.
Absolutely. There's not much more we can do to this game because we need to make it. We need to make physical copies of it.
That's why I think this is fucking hilarious when you see multiplayer games come out with the beta 2 months before the game is coming out. I'm like, what the fuck you mean the beta? It's not the beta.
Right? Oh, absolutely.
This shit better be done.
This game is done.
This is the finished product. This is we need to see what this day 1 patch is going to look like.
Exactly, that's all it is. Yeah, that's all. We need to figure out what hot fixes we need to do.
Yeah, in certain games, it's understandable if you consider what the online component of the game is. I could understand that. But I could also see why they would release the beta 2 months before. It should be a year.
In the Steam atmosphere, you don't even see this shit anymore. Now it's just game's not finished. It's an alpha. It's a work in progress. Why don't you buy it and then we'll fix it along as you go? You can play this fucking fishing game. There's only one fish in there.
Consider this. Though I don't want to get into a green light thing.
That's later.
Consider that.
Green light.
Consider what it is. Is basically the company can afford to do what is that with professional people to do Q&A. If you're a company and you're making something like, let's say, The Division, since that seems to be the one everybody brings up in terms of releases long before announcement, Watch Dogs is the same deal. Mm-hmm. You have a amount of time before the game releases than when it was announced. But the game is not Call of Duty, it's not Assassin's Creed, it's not Halo, it's not Fallout. It's of an unknown origin. You don't know what it is.
It's a fucking alien? What is
That's right. It's of you don't know what the IP is. You don't really know how it... You need to know what it is. If I tell you what the new Assassin's Creed is and say, hey, new Assassin's Creed's coming out in 6 months, you have a general idea of what you're going to get.
Well, but with the new
IP, you don't know
those annual franchises that you're going to get the same product for the most part is because they are very similar in that they just rehash a lot of code and art assets.
They do, and outside of that,
I can understand that from an outsider's perspective. I can still see that where you're developing a new product and you have to make a lot of things from scratch, like the systems there are not systems in place.
Yes, I mean
so you never know what can go wrong.
Yes, exactly. But it's not even.
Take a look at what happened with the Halo Anniversary Collection. They were adding like engines on top of the old engines and shit. And they're trying to tether all 4 games together into a single UI and all this crazy shit.
And it's
and do you would be able to like make your own playlist of missions from across 4 different games.
Oh damn!
So it's a cool idea, but you never know how that shit could go wrong.
Yeah,
it's complicated stuff.
It's when it released the way it released, a lot of that comes down to just what we're talking about is that they set up that fall release. It's not like a certain company that might come out and say, here, we're going to try to release it here, but when it's done, it has to be done. If you have a company telling you a year and a half from now, this window is when this game is going to be released, they mean it. So when they have that game released, in working order or not, they're going to release it. Every single Halo game has always released with a patch a week or even day one of its initial release. Because of that, of course, you're going to get those updates that are going to come along with the game. It's not because the game is... How can I say? It's not because it's broken. No game is broken.
People literally couldn't.
No,
play
I agree with you. Now, I mean just the general understanding of it. It's merely that it's not going to be perfected or finished yet.
Oh, yeah,
so when you have the several months to go,
that's like any competitive game.
It is
now because they have the ability to patch things.
That's almost any
like
game.
Look at. I'm surprised we haven't talked about this yet, but like, I just remembered this actually. Halo 2. It was one of the most notorious games for being delayed because they literally bit off way more than they could ever chew, and they had They pushed the game back like twice. It was the first instance of a major game being that anticipated, where like mainstream news outlets are covering the story, and then people are like, "Yo, where the Halo at, dog?" Like, damn.
But that's an example of a game being pushed back to fix a technical purpose, which makes sense. But when you're talking about a game release being pushed back to make it even a game at all that is of no established understanding, Watch Dogs doesn't have that presence. The Division doesn't have that presence. I could ask any of you right now what the Division is. You might get several separate answers, even though we've known of this game for several years now. A lot of that's due to what we hadn't played it, and we can't refer it back to the last. If I tell you, here's the Assassin's Creed coming this fall, I could at least tell you, oh yeah, you have this new system that allows you to do this, and you understand what I might mean by that. But if I'm telling you the Division, there is no point of reference to tell you that. Now you're asking a company to say, right when you show this game, okay, now tell an audience in 6 months when it's going to release of an IP no one knows of. I barely know what they're doing with the Division, and it's already been several years since it's announced. It was E3 2013, I think they announced it. And I barely could tell you 100%. Even I'm trying to figure out this whole thing with the Dark Zone. When you go into there and now you enter the multiplayer, in my mind, I'm like, okay, so what's the offline stuff?
But how does that work? But that's a lot of that has to come down to the fact that it's just not being marketed well either. Like, they're not telling you.
They don't want to tell you. They don't want to say X feature is going to be in the game, and then it's not going to be in the game.
Exactly.
That's the problem with release dates, is when you say something, you're now going to be held to that.
Exactly.
If you fail to meet it.
With the
that was the issue with Halo 2. They kept throwing out a release date saying it's going to be here, and they pushed it back not once, but at least twice.
Well, it's still
we're talking about a time in gaming where like features were everything. Now we kind of accept that first-person shooters or any game of any genre will have a certain things that they're there. It's no longer like special that a game is built around a single feature, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Well, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. When we don't get easily impressed now. Like when Halo 2 came out and they showed off the dual wielding, it was like, whoa, you can hold,
which I couldn't get.
Oh
I didn't understand that. I'm like, dude, we had dual wielding in GoldenEye.
Perfect Dark played GoldenEye. I don't know where the fuck you got that shit from.
Oh my god, dual
where
wielding.
Where did you get this from? That was not new in 2004.
I played Halo 2. I was like, I guess it's cool that I can shoot one instead of the other.
You to me, bitch, I played more GoldenEye than you.
And then how did you not know?
I'm not saying that was me. I'm saying that's how people were. That's
absolutely.
That's the kind of shit people were impressed by.
Make that distinction. I
guess. No, that's absolutely the truth. Why the fuck would you ever make that a feature at an E3 conference and then you're not going to tell me that it wasn't important?
Like, there's two things.
Or like, how about here's another example. They're like driving around.
Picks up another.
They're driving around in the Warthog or the Ghost or whatever, and you could like hijack the vehicle, and everybody's like, "Whoa, you can hijack the vehicle!" Like now, you're just like, "All right, whatever."
Yeah.
But it's like this goes into if you're treating Halo like Halo 2, like they had new concepts or new ideas before those concepts were finalized. That's when they should have thought about.
They never had you didn't really have this idea of having sequels of games where they were all very much similar to one another. They just didn't give a shit. They were like, make whatever that draws people in.
I don't agree with that.
They were completely different.
It was more Halo 2 expanded a lot more than what Halo 1 did, but I would say you still
the
issue had that.
The issue with their delays was that they tried to make the tech demo that they showed off was completely not possible on the Xbox. Like, completely not possible. That level was not even in the game.
That goes back to what Craig was saying. Well, that's not necessarily at fault of anyone other than the people who are marketing it, and they need to properly convey what they're trying to market. If you look at what the guy from Ubisoft stated regarding the Division and how many people were upset about how it doesn't either look that way, or even with major one with Watch Dogs, he stated that he only wants a game to be shown if it's playable, and this is what it's fully going to represent. I mean, the downgrade was minimal, but it was still enough to have a very negative response by people. When you look at what they showed this year with E3, with their
how's that any different than what I said?
What do you mean? It's not. I'm actually adding on to that. It's not any different. I don't know why. It's like to Craig's point when he was saying that it's their fault and they need to convey that idea. That's what he's stating that Wild Hogs is doing, and that's also what he's stating that there was another.
Watch Dogs, I think
it was for Honor.
What the fuck was Wild Hogs?
Wild Hogs is the new Ghost Recon game.
Isn't that fucking old movie?
Yeah, that's that Tim Allen movie.
It might be Wild Run.
Like a couple 40-year-old guys.
Yeah.
But Wild Run is their new Ghost Recon game, which was fully playable. And the same thing with their For Honor game, which was fully playable. That's a representation.
Rainbow Six Siege became
the
Division.
And it was okay. So when you look at what you see, what's happening with how they showed off that game, the game was playable versus the other things they're showing that were implementing the system to show you the degrading of the graphical fidelity. What they're showing you with Halo 2 is saying this is what we think it'll look like. What they're releasing is, well, we realize we can't do this because all these other features bogged down that processing power.
It wasn't the features. It looked too good.
Yes, they're not conveying properly what
it comes down to.
But that's exactly what we're discussing. They announced it too fucking early.
Again, exactly. Like when it comes down to when you announce a game
into the pressure of when you
announce a game too early, you are being dishonest to everyone you're presenting this game to, and that is, to me, that's just bad business. It's plain and simple. It's bad business. I shouldn't be able to show you something. I can't make a cake, be like, oh man, look at how good this frosting is. Like, this shit looks tight, right? And then you go ahead, you bite into the cake, and it's just like fucking mud in there. It's dishonest. It's false advertising.
I agree.
You wouldn't buy that cake.
I agree with you to a degree. Only because when we talk about the dynamic understanding of what a game is, it's something that is going to change over time.
I agree.
So when you think about, let's just say example of something that's changed because of either technical reasons or because of conceptual reasons. If someone was making a game let's say how Borderlands was first shown off. Borderlands was shown off to be a very realistic looking game, and that's what it was originally going to be. Mm-hmm. They ended up changing it, overhauling all of this. So to them, they're saying, well, we know Borderlands to be this. This is what it's going to be. This is what it's going to look like. We could probably have this released in about a year and a half. Because it's a new IP, we need to market it. In that year and a half, something might change to where someone says, this works better than this. I think we should do this. All those things that snowballed into that change, no one could ever prepare for that. The best example we could use is Final Fantasy 15. There's a technical thing they cannot do that they can do. So, though they first showed it to you this way, it was never their intention to make you think that 100% this is what it's going to be. Because even they didn't know they would step into it. Now that you know what you know with Final Fantasy 15 from Versus to 15, would you have really wanted them to basically stick to one set plan, knowing that it hurts the finalization of what the game is?
More on that point too, the cell shading ended up becoming the most prominent feature about the game that people liked.
And it did.
That's because the market was so bogged down with gray, gritty stupidness.
I think that's
of course, when you put color into it, it's going to stick out and look different.
That's a less relevant point though, because I don't think that harmed the game as much as like a lot of other things will.
That's what I'm saying. Like if you like literally come down and say, "I'm going to offer you A." With this game,
it's a mix.
And then I agree you come down and say, "Hey, instead of A, I'm giving you B." You should still get it though.
I agree with both points. I agree with
there are unknowable factors.
It's to a degree.
If you're working in a company and you don't want to release, you don't want to say shit about what you're working on because you're not certain about what the final product is going to look like. But you have people that have invested in your game and they want to start marketing. You don't always get the final say.
Absolutely.
When you're a dev, you're just a dev. If you're not an investor, like a lot of times these games do get shifted around because they want to appeal to a broader demographic.
Oh, of course.
So it could have easily been the other way. For all we know, what if there's some fucking alternate reality out there where Borderlands was originally cell shaded and some guy's like, who's gonna want to look at that shit? But he's the one funding the project and he says, no, I think a more realistic game would appeal to a broader demographic that doesn't like artsy shit.
And to Craig's point, I understand why one would be mad that anyone tried to market a game this way. But it's like, to them, they legitimately probably felt realistically that, hey, we're probably close to release. There's lots of games where I feel their delay was so soon to initial release that the change they made was really huge. They're not trying to say that this is what the new game we're trying to, mislead you and market to you by. They're merely saying that, well, this is what we changed in it. It's even why you could see Final Fantasy 15 and see they're not trying to make it like what they did with 13.
See, when we talk about this, now we're just walking a fine line because now you're just saying that the company could just put out anything. They could put out any fucking thing they want. Like, oh, I'm going to make the most amazing fucking game. It's going to have huge fucking open world. You're going to be able to, like, fly into space, like, parachute down and, like, shoot motherfuckers because they're going to be coming in, like, flying in, like, biplanes after you. We're going to be fucking shooting up with your laser guns and shit. And then, like, when the game comes out and you're like, well, we couldn't do all that, so here's, like...
But it's
here's Red Dead Redemption.
I agree.
That game did come out. It was called Just Cause. It was made by Deep Silver.
They achieved it. No, but to your point when you say that, I agree. That's wrong for a company to do that. But I don't know if we've ever gotten a game change what it was originally going to be, look like, concept, and basically not tell you this, I'd say a month or 2 months prior to release. Every time we've had a drastic change, the game has always been remarketed.
I've heard about 14. Games being changed up like that, but it's always a story after the game launches where you hear the devs talking about the concept phases.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were still doing just story.
Well, didn't they do that shit with like the Alien versus Aliens game, Colonial Marines? Isn't that like the same shit that happened there? Where like it was showing us this thing, and then all of a sudden it releases and it just looks like shit. And no one it's just fucking awful. Like it's nothing like you've seen. Like it happens. Like it does happen.
But it's like happen. I don't think it happened to like the point you're making. In my mouth.
I don't think it's acceptable to announce.
No, I'm not sure
you said that, Akash.
No, what I'm saying is that like. All I'm saying is that like when we say things like that, when all of a sudden we're giving a pass to like certain things like this, when like you don't like talk about it, like I said, you're walking a fine line because it gives the devs an excuse to do something like that, to do something like what Aliens Colonial Marines did.
I get, mind you, that whole situation. That whole situation.
But then you look at something like they released that other Aliens game, that Isolation game. That game was fucking amazing. So like, you can't say it's just because it's Aliens game.
It's not. It's that whole situation with Gearbox and Sega. It's like Randy Pitchford has literally said that. Oh well, it was Sega's part, and then Sega's like, well, it was Gearbox. Everybody was pointing their fingers at who fucked that game up.
Well, yeah, because the game fucked up. I know, of course you're gonna point fingers.
But I would not say that it was mismarketed in the respect they showed you one, released another. If you consider before the game's released, they still showed you what it was eventually going to be. It was never like, okay, we're gonna show you that last trailer and then release this game. But I mean, to their credit, if you have an idea that you really want to change,
don't you dare.
If you have a game that you really want to change and this concept doesn't fit what you're originally doing, I believe you got to give them a chance to change that idea and let them make something new. Ico was originally supposed to be a PlayStation 1 game. Mm-hmm. There's lots of games, even The Last Guardian, shown as a PlayStation 3 game, released as a PlayStation 4 game.
That game is like, I look at that game and it's still the same. It's still the same animal.
I know, but
sure it's on the PS4, but it's still the same animal. I know, watching it from the PS3 days, looking at that trailer, I'm like, okay, sure it's on the PS4 now, but I'm getting the same game.
I get that, but the things that they changed internally, we don't know just how much it is. Clearly, it was enough to make them say, we cannot make this on this type of hardware. We need the new hardware to be made in order to get it there. Those are like slight ones, but there are still other games that have released and changed.
Wow,
bless you,
just ruin everything.
It's all your fault.
Podcast over. Shut it down.
But there are games that have changed what they were doing to be other games for the better. We still have a lot that have done that, like what we were saying with Borderlands, or even like what we might be saying with games that we're talking about right now. Some of these games might have, like the Stella character being taken out of 15. Yeah, we don't know how bad this character could have been. We don't even know we don't know the things that were changed for the reasons they were changed. Mm-hmm. They're saying that, hey, look, we marketed this to have a love story between these two.
Here's the bottom
We
line.
marketed some of this stuff to be this way, but we changed our minds midway. I don't think Square ever went into that development saying 2015's release. They started development on that game probably 2004 or 2003, if you consider we first physically saw the game in 2005. That's hard for them to know.
When you something like Final Fantasy 15, that's an extreme case because we know that game had to go through some crazy overhaul because of the actual delay.
I agree, that's when it was versus 13.
I agree.
It was an extreme case.
I agree, but the change that I'm telling you is not a change done for technical reason. It's a change done because of personal.
Change.
Yes,
yeah.
They took away the idea that here's the Stella character that you see through the trailer with them eating the dinner, and they changed it.
Because a lot of times you don't know something's going to work until you try
it.
Absolutely. I get all that.
That happened all the way 2012 or so. That's when that originally happened.
But to me,
we never knew that happened. Thus, it was still being marketed.
But to me, because of what Final Fantasy 15 is and how much of a delay it was, that's an extreme case. Like, of course, you wouldn't announce a game in 2000. What was it, like 7, 8 when that game got announced?
It was like 2005.
No, it was like 2005.
Oh, even worse. I'm sorry. When that game got announced in 2005,
things got crazy.
Of course, it's 10 years later. Of
course,
that game went through complete. Of course, they changed shit.
I get that. That's not the point I'm making up. The point that I'm bringing up is that there is a character in this game that's not.
Yes,
and she's been removed, but that's not because of a technical reason as much as that's a design choice that they said we're not doing this scene. I don't believe that. I don't believe that entire scene's in that game. So we don't know
the whole character's not in the game. Of course, the scene's not in the game.
So we don't know how big she was. Mm-hmm. We don't know was it a good idea, a bad idea. Maybe they felt somewhere. So maybe somewhere.
I'm still kind of pissed off about it.
Even though I sort of feel that way, the writer assured everybody that he's fine with the change. Absolutely. Nomura stated that he's always sounded off. Yeah, Nomura stated that he was okay with the changes and that he okayed all the conceptual things, but the game is still what he originally wanted 13 to essentially be.
Okay.
So I get what you mean, but when I say that about the character, I'm trying to show an example of when they changed their minds in that development and you saw something else, but saw something else when it was released. We don't know what made them change their mind when taking that character out.
Well, here's the thing, though. When you have, say you announce a game and you show off part of the game, and then you make a change like that, or you make some kind of big change, to me, all that matters is you've shown what it's going to look like after you've made the change. If a company would have said that a game is going to look like this, and then the last minute they change a bunch of shit, and then they put the game out,
they still do.
Exactly.
That's not.
Let's be real. When a game is announced and then they market it, they don't owe you shit. They don't owe you anything.
Absolutely.
You haven't bought anything yet.
Absolutely. That's for any product, but I mean, like,
my thing is being disappointed.
It's just a massive.
They don't owe you anything.
Like, it's a massive gray area because you have that your whole Final Fantasy.
What the fuck are you gonna say? Like, oh man, I'm like, you guys hurt my feelings. I'm not gonna buy the game.
I mean, that's what you do. You just stop buying. That's how the economy works.
That's not true.
Well, I mean, that's
a lot of people.
That's how the economy is supposed to work.
The minority of people that bitch about stuff on the internet are the first ones to run.
Oh, absolutely. I'm saying that's how the economy is supposed to work, but it doesn't. it doesn't work within the video game space because
just
we have fanboys.
People who complain about Call of Duty, like at any chance
absolutely.
they get, they're on the forums. Like, Call of Duty. It's like they're the first one. They're
That's
the ones at Walmart at
like,
fucking 11:45.
Like, I was watching this guy review Transformers. It was like, yeah, the worst movie that everybody saw because. Like it's like Transformers 3.
I didn't see that movie.
The worst, but no, like the movie does. All those movies do great, but everyone's the first to oh these movies suck. Blah, 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 blah. Everyone goes to see them because they want to see how fucking bad they are.
I don't ever watch that.
But like that's just how
it's popular. That's how popularity.
Exactly, that's how society is.
When,
but like
when you don't know when something is popular, and even if you don't like it, you still want to see why other people like it.
Yeah. But I mean, like, what it comes down to, like, to me, it's just a gray area because, like I said, you have that whole situation with Final Fantasy where it's just like, yeah, it's a conceptual decision. They feel like, yeah, we believe that it would work in this way, but you know, not everyone's doing it for these reasons.
I know.
They're putting out these like really nice looking things because, like, oh, look at us, look how pretty we are.
I agree.
And then they intentionally release an inferior product because they can't.
You're talking about that? No, because he's talking about Edwin is talking about conceptual changes, and you were talking about other types of changes, like misleading aesthetic changes. Like when you go to the E3 conference and you see they're running that shit on a PC, you're like, oh,
yeah.
What's going
on? It's running on a PC and it's like the whole trailer is completely CG.
But you know what?
Like it's CG with a put in HUD there just to make it look like an actual game.
Completely dishonest.
Absolutely.
But you know what? You as a gamer have to have a keen eye for those things and understand that business is ruthless, and you have to protect your own interests.
Boys, like we can't get that shit up and running, show that mud physics.
Act like they're not going to do that.
Being old, that's like now I see these things now, like it pisses me off.
They're thinking. I mean, as misleading and fucked up as it is, sometimes they are just thinking about their own livelihood. Like, what if you're trying to make a bomb ass looking game and then you hear that it went multi-plat, and you're like, oh no.
I mean, even to the biggest games that have released, when Craig's saying that he doesn't want a company to come out and mislead everybody this way. I understand that, but even the biggest one that was the hugest culprit of this with Ubisoft still came out and said all of our E3 stuff is going to be running the way you see it now. That we don't want anything being shown that misrepresents the game. I don't believe Ubisoft was doing this purposely. I think they really wanted to market Watch Dogs, and at the time Watch Dogs released,
they were never really out there like, oh yeah, by the way, guys, this isn't running on the console.
No, that was actually stated.
No, they have to state that.
Yeah,
I don't remember hearing them say. The only time I ever realized that I read an article about it.
Yes, they released and stated that this is the hardware it's running.
Well, yeah, but you have to like search for that shit. Like, I want that like to be stated like at the conference.
Yeah,
I want you to be public with it.
Say that shit.
You have to. Like, you should.
I agree, but what I'm trying to state is that when
thinking about you have to, that doesn't mean they're going to.
Well, absolutely. I know they're not going to, but I feel like
look, man.
Integrity.
There's a good reason why it didn't. The reason why it didn't was when Watch Dogs was
saying. I'm not saying that. Of course, they don't do it because they don't have to. Of course,
there's a difference between what I think it should be like and how it's
absolutely.
Like I
said, I'm saying what I feel that should be happening. This is how the industry should work because to me that is being dishonest. Well, I can like show you like oh, here it is, and like whisper in the corner, by the way, or something.
The world is not
like you can like because the fact that I'm like hush hush and like whispering like behind my breath, that's just dishonest. Like you are not vocally clearly stating what is being shown to me.
To their defense, people knew it wasn't because the systems had not been released. They stated that this was running on the specs of what they assumed what the systems were going to be. Now, because this game is still unfinished...
That's the bane of being a launch title.
You have to sort of look at it from their perspective. Neither of these systems released. They have a game they have to market, and they're basically making it on hardware that's similar to the specs that were given to them. So when they're making this game does not have the finished world. This game doesn't have every single last feature. So to them, they're not going to come in and say, okay, we have this game ready. Let's go put in some, beast graphics cards. But, let's turn those graphics cards down to not make it run right. The reason why they don't want to do that is they still have to market what they believe the game is going to look like and how it's going to run. This game ran buttery smooth, wind effects, or HD. Everything was looking fabulous and running seamlessly simply because they still have to market the game. So when they're showing you this is high-class PC, I don't believe they're trying to purposely say, well, it's not going to look like this on systems, because they still hit somewhere around that ballpark when those systems were initially released. To their credit, that's not what they're doing with any of the E3 games that you saw. All of them were running in real time, and they're showing you, hey, this is what it is, and this is what it's going to look like. Division, Watch Dogs, both brand new IPs. There's only one way they can convey this, and that's using the hardware that physically exists versus the hardware that will be coming out. It's hard for them to do that. I 100% agree with you, Craig, that if you have a game and you're trying to convey it, what you're marketing to us needs to be what releases, and if it doesn't, the next time you market it to us needs to show us what that fix is.
Absolutely.
What is the difference? Because I might have bought it thinking that this is what it was.
Absolutely.
So you have to say that, and I 100% agree with you in that regard. So I don't feel Ubisoft did that purposely misleading. It's like Star Wars. Star Wars 1313 was actually released using... That's right, Craig. I'm sorry, Craig's trying right now, guys. Jesus Christ. No, it's hitting this man all week. No, but 1313 was shown on PC hardware. They're not trying to say, we're going to lie to you. They're trying to say, we think that this is what next-gen hardware will be. We're aiming for that, and here's our game right now.
And it wasn't.
Didn't exist. Don't do that.
Nope.
Don't do that, Akash. Don't do that. Don't do that.
All right, well.
Getting where it hurts. Craig's sobbing a bit. We gotta
know,
take care of it, man. Share our final thoughts.
Oh,
Craig
I
can't
don't
take
care.
this.
I don't care that game.
Craig cannot physically take this.
I wanted it.
We will say
How
that
you gonna hate
on
Uncharted 3 for being all cinematic? That game was like fucking just all
I
you could just watch
I hate
that
Uncharted
game.
3 for completely different reasons. We will get into that.
Okay.
But
I'll finish this soon.
Yeah, final thoughts.
I think I know what happens towards the end.
Yeah, final thoughts is just I stand by my opinion. Like, you need to present what you need, like what the game's gonna look like. I get like around time like when the new launch of the new systems come out. I get that whole, we're not sure what we're getting to work with type deal. But even still, there's got to be something you can do, because like some of these changes are like pretty fucking drastic, and I'm just not for it.
I just feel like I've become like desensitized or apathetic to the whole thing, because like I was like when I saw the Division, I was just like, oh, cool, all right, whatever. And I'm like, that looks like it could be good if it actually is what it is. I'm serious. I'm not even
tell you more stuff.
And that's the terrible thing. Because like now when we look at trailers now, like now when we look at trailers, that's what you have to think.
Yeah,
you have to think like, oh, this is going to be awesome.
But how much of it is real? There's a part of the trailer Division, and we need to do another podcast in this bitch. There's a part of the Division where you turn around, you see two NPCs kneeling down. He's like, they're not targets. Bullshit. You're going to play this game. You may never see that event happen. So I agree. I understand where you're going from with that.
I'm always skeptical of any game that says it's open world. Those are always the most fucked up like games that because they're not just marketing the game. If you look at the trailer for The Division, they're marketing to you an experience. Yeah. And this is something they also did with the new Rainbow Six game, where they think that people are going to get online and talk like this.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, buddy, let's get it. Let's get it all. You got the clips loaded, Akash. I'm low on water.
I'd like to do a podcast just on like the E3 presentations.
I wanted to do a spoof of that trailer so bad.
We doing it
like how it actually is going to be. Like it's not going to be like, okay, moving into 4B, section 6.
We doing it.
Check my 6. I'm going through this tunnel.
No. Check my 6.
I want you to check my 6.
Yeah, right. The first thing you hear was like, damn, that bitch gay.
You have to tell your
check your ass, motherfucker.
I like to do that gay shit. Like, dude, I'm getting a hostage right now. He's still going on about how gay you are. Like,
hey, man, gay as fuck, dog. Damn, I should have never played with this nigga, dog. No, we shouldn't have invited this nigga to play with us. Damn. Reloading.
Changing bag.
I'll tell you some
guy in the background.
We will be doing all those things.
Man, that's the point, though. They're marketing to you an experience. And a good example of this is, like, I know I seem like I have it out for Bungie, because I kind of do. But I'm not going to talk about Halo. But, like, in general, like, they're known for making extremely good trailers. Oh, if I could say what they're best at as a company is making fucking montages and trailers for the games.
Everyone, like...
And what they
everyone
always
quotes
do,
Halo trailers.
if you look at their trailers,
like everyone, like they put out good trailers.
Not even their gameplay trailers. I'm talking about what they call their VDocs, where they have an assortment of clips from the dev team talking about how good their fucking game is and why it's good.
Lying.
And they're always like really well edited and like the music and everything, and it's always great.
We could say that for another podcast because there's a lot to say with Destiny on that. That was
I mean that could be a totally different topic, but that's my point. Is that this is something that's you are marketing your game in that way,
absolutely,
and it's just it's like borderline misleading.
Unfortunate, there are victims,
but you can't say it's lying because for all you know, they actually believe that the game was good.
You're right. No, you're right. No, you're right. You're right.
All right, but let's go ahead and wrap this up.
Yeah,
it's been a good podcast, guys.
All right, we did it. We made it through another one.
And see you guys next week for episode 8.
This is 7, so yeah. 7 typically comes after 8.
Yeah.
Or the other way around.
I'm calling it right now. The Division is going to be... You can reduce it down to digging around in the same fucking trash can for the same gun every time. Or some shit like that. I'm calling it right now. That's the game. That's the game right there. Open world, baby. Trash can foraging simulator. Let's go.
What it means to say is this is a Kosh.
This is great.
I gotta get online. It's gonna be just like Destiny. I'm gonna get online and do my weekly challenge for digging in the ground with the garbage can for the pistol. Why was it there? It's the apocalypse. Why are they throwing pistols in the fucking garbage can?
It's like I'm gonna throw this life in the garbage.
I'm gonna check that weird building over there for the 50th time to see if it has anything.
Shut up! This is Craig.
Open world, baby. Let's go.
Peace, bitches.